The Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai famously wrote, "A man doesn't have time in his life to have time for everything. He doesn't have seasons enough to have a season for every purpose." Kohelet was wrong about that. A man needs to love and to hate at the same moment, to laugh and cry with the same eyes, with the same hands to throw stones and to gather them, to make love in war and war in love. But Amichai didn't think opposites always belonged together either. He had no patience for the coexistence of every binary simultaneously. While he valued the Jewish textual tradition, valued his traditional Jewish upbringing, and could hold the religious and secular aspects of Israeli society in creative tension, he was clear-eyed about the dangers of religious nationalism. Kahanist extremists, like the likes of which have seized control of Israel's current government, were anathema to his view of a vibrant and pluralistic Israel, a pluralistically Jewish but also multi-faith and multi-ethnic society. How Amichai might have felt about the current war, we cannot know, but perhaps you, like me, find yourself feeling multiple things at once this week. Maybe you're angry with Hamas for playing hide the ball on these hostage negotiations, pretending to accept the Israeli proposal, but really scuttling the deal with its counter-proposal. Maybe you also feel anger toward Netanyahu and his willingness to sacrifice lives on both sides of the Gaza border on the altar, it seems, of his own political survival. Or maybe you're confused, like me, about what is the best strategy for securing the release of hostages. Is military pressure working toward or against a viable hostage deal? Perhaps you're frustrated with extreme rhetoric on campus encampments and bemused by the lack of sophistication or basic understanding of the conflict from so very many of those who don keffiyehs and demand divestment. Maybe you're proud that Eden Golan advanced to the finals of Eurovision, but sad also that she's been subjected to hateful slogans and chants. And maybe you're impatient with your rabbi, who seems to be talking about Israel, Hamas, and the war once again. Actually, my message today is not really about the war, but this coming week includes 2 days, 2 separate days, which cannot pass without my mentioning them, especially this year. Monday is Yom HaZikaron, Israeli Memorial Day. Tuesday is Yom HaAtzmaut, marking 76 years since Israel's establishment and the signing of the Declaration of Independence, a document about which at this time last year I was speaking of how vital it is for establishing and maintaining a vibrant liberal democracy for all 9.5 million of its citizens. Amichai said that there isn't time to separate out our competing emotions or activities, but sometimes we must. Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut demand different energy, different attention in a nation which has lost so much, struggled so much, achieved so much. They are companions. And sometimes it's not healthy to combine 2 things. You know that I love Baltimore, and I'm generally pretty forgiving of small issues in the city since we have so many big issues to deal with. But sometimes you've just got to laugh. And driving home from the airport late at night this week, I saw something that I'd literally never seen before, here or anywhere else. As I pulled off the BW Parkway onto Russell Street, the traffic light was green and red. You've seen this light. I'm just a big fan. You're a big fan. Yeah, it's not like in Israel. You know, in Israel, the light turns yellow when you have to stop to warn you, like everywhere else, to come to the light. But then it actually turns yellow again to prepare you to gun the accelerator through so that you don't miss like one moment. But this was not that. This is not the yellow light. I want to be clear. It was a red light and a green light on the same light, simultaneously. It reminded me of that old Stephen Wright joke, where he says, I bought a dog and I named him Stay. So whenever I call him, I say, come here, Stay. Come here, Stay. How many of you have been to Israel during Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut? It's a very powerful 48 hours. On any normal year, or at least a normal year for Israel, Yom HaZikaron is somber, contemplative. People visit the graves of their loved ones who fell in battle or were killed in terror attacks. Memorial services are held. Shared society groups mark the occasion by grieving for both Israeli and Palestinian dead. It's a tough day. For Jews at least, and to some degree Arab Israelis, the next day is a celebration. For many Palestinians, though, Yom HaAtzmaut is for them a Nakba, a catastrophe, marking loss of their families' homes and villages, if not Palestinian, at least Arab control over territory which is now Medinat Israel. Memorial Day and Independence Day are two different things, and it's best that they are that. Traffic lights need to be either red or green. Both together is not good. But there's a difference between sequential thinking and binary thinking. Yom HaZikaron flows into Yom HaAtzmaut. Red lights turn green and then back again to red. But these days, it seems like we're living in a world where many people are stuck on red, and many other people are stuck simultaneously on green. And this entrenchment of ideas, of rhetoric, of conclusions about the war, politics, what is just and who deserves justice, is dangerous because it perpetuates cycles of othering, objectification, and dehumanization. Instead of, quote, I'll deal with my pain now, but your pain matters, which some people might be thinking and saying, everybody goes to their own corner to nurse their wounds, to come out swinging in the next round of I'm right and you're wrong about everything. But our Parsha is less concerned about right and wrong and more concerned with holiness. Kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall be holy, for I, Hashem, your God, am holy. And we Jews may claim Yud He Vav He as our God, but that is about our allegiance to God, however we understand God, not God's exclusive concern for us, chas v'shalom. To misunderstand this is to adopt a Hamas-like worldview, where you have God in your pocket, and you're sure of what it is that God wants. And it's exactly what concerned Amichai decades ago, when he saw where Israel's national religious party was headed. So let me share one verse of many wonderful psukim from this week's Parsha, one of my favorite parshiot in the Torah, to be sure. Lo tekalel cheresh v'lifnei iver lo titein michshol. You shall not insult the deaf, nor place a stumbling block before the blind. V'yareta me'elohecha ani Adonai. You shall fear your God, I am the Lord. There's a lot that we could say about this verse, but ultimately it's a verse about empathy, about seeing ourselves in someone who, by virtue of their station, abilities, or set of experiences, might be different from us. You might think these prescriptions are about disability rights, and they are certainly also that. But remember, this section of Torah is the holiness code. It's all about Kedusha. So before I conclude, I want to share Rashi's take on verse 15. Rashi, the 11th century French Jewish commentator. Regarding stumbling blocks, Rashi views this as a metaphor. Don't take advantage of someone's weaknesses. Strive to set your fellow up for success. And on the first part of the verse, he says this, Lo tekalel cheresh, you should not curse the deaf. Ein li ele cheresh, minayin lerabot kol adam. So you might think that this is referring only to a deaf person, but how can we tell that actually we're concerned about cursing any person, every person? It can't possibly be okay, according to the Torah, that you should avoid cursing a deaf person, but that you can curse everybody else. Talmud Lomar, we learn from the Torah elsewhere, Ba'amcha lo ta'or, that in Shmot, in Exodus chapter 20, it says there that you shouldn't curse any people, or it seems to be perhaps curse the people by way of the princes, the leaders of the community. But either way, we're talking about hearing people elsewhere. So then, what's the next question that Rashi is going to ask? Im kain lama ne'emar cheresh. Okay, fine, we've now established that you shouldn't curse anyone, but now why do you have to mention specifically a deaf person? It should go without saying that a deaf person also you shouldn't curse. And here's how he responds. Ma cheresh miyuchad shehu b'chayim. Just as a deaf person in particular is alive, af kol shehu b'chayim, yatsa hamet she'eno b'chayim. So just as a deaf person is still in the land of the living, so too we should understand that we're talking about particularly a person who cannot hear, but who is still alive. So this may seem like a strange move, but let me explain what I think he means here. What he's saying is there is a world of people who can hear when other people curse them, praise them too, but curse them. And then there are people who cannot hear these things. Some of those people are no longer in the land of the living. And so Rashi wants us to understand something actually really key. He's saying that just because someone cannot hear you doesn't mean that it's okay to say whatever you want to say. You might think that deaf people, like dead people, can't hear, so what's the bother? What's the harm that we possibly could be doing? They don't even know what you're saying. And Rashi says no. Deaf people are alive, and therefore it matters what we say about them. Some other time we can talk about what we say about the dead, but that's his purpose here. Rashi is teaching us that how we behave toward others is only half of the equation. He's not interested in utilitarian ethics. Saying or doing harmful things harms also ourselves. It creates distrust. It limits our capacity for holiness, for godliness. When we curse the deaf, we diminish our entire community. They may not hear others, but we do hear what we're saying, and also others hear what we're saying when those words leave our lips. And so it seems God hears, and that must matter to the kind of society that we want to create. Amichai understood that to be a Jew is to hold our essential humanity at the core of our being. To love Israel is to mourn the costs of Jewish self-determination. We might be confused, we might feel sad or angry or misunderstood. Each and all of these emotions and plenty of others are certainly understandable. And we might feel many things at once, and that's okay. In moments like that, we might take a breath. We might try to sequence those emotions a little better. Let them come to us in turn. Process them. Try to understand them. The red light, the green light, the yellow light. When we do, we remember that our God is a God of peace, and that if we work for it, if we're open to it, as Amichai was, if war and conflict are for us, according to our tradition, never ends in and of themselves, then peace can break out when we least expect it. That's why we end every single one of our prayers with a prayer for peace. Not in some Pollyannish hope or expectation that wars will simply end because we wish them away, but to understand that peace is always the goal. Never, ever is war to be sustained when it need not be sustained. Whereas Amichai says we must make love in war and war in love. What might peace look like when it comes? In this week, when we honor the memories of the slaughtered, the fallen, and the innocents, this week as we celebrate 76 years of Medinat Israel, I want to give Amichai the last word. Here's his poem called Wild Peace. Not the peace of a ceasefire, not even the vision of the wolf and the lamb, but rather as in the heart when the excitement is over and you can talk only about a great wariness. I know that I know how to kill. That makes me an adult. And my son plays with a toy gun that knows how to open and close its eyes and say, Ima. A peace without the big noise of beating swords into plowshares without words, without the heavy thud, without the thud of the heavy rubber stamp. Let it be light, floating like lazy white foam, a little rest for the wounds. Who speaks of healing? And the howl of the orphans is passed from one generation to the next, as in a relay race, the baton never falls. Let it come, like wildflowers, suddenly, because the field must have it. Wild peace. Halavai. Shabbat Shalom.